Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Emissions Reduction Alberta's Lessons Learned workshop that will highlight some really exciting oil sands in situ technology solutions and the impact these innovations could have on the industry. My name is Mark Summers. I'm the Executive Director of Technology and Innovation for ERA, and I have the distinct pleasure of being the moderator for today's event. For more than 10 years now, ERA has been investing some of the revenues from the carbon price paid by large emitters to accelerate the development and adoption of innovative clean technology solutions for Alberta. Since 2009, we've committed more than $600 million toward 185 projects that are worth over $4 billion worth of investment into Alberta. These projects are helping to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, create competitive industries, and lead to new business opportunities in the province. These projects are estimated to deliver cumulative greenhouse gas reductions of almost 35 million tons by 2030. As we deal with the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, ERA is focused on investing in economic stimulus projects that can deliver jobs and emissions reductions in Alberta. In case you haven't heard about it yet, ERA's $150 million Shovel Ready Challenge was announced on November 2nd and is now open for submissions. Also, if you're not registered, on November 25th, we're hosting a webinar where you can learn more about our $55 million Energy Savings for Business program. This program is targeting small and medium-scale industrial and commercial businesses across Alberta. Please take a look at our website if you're interested, or just to learn more about both of these opportunities. We hosted our first Lessons Learned workshop in 2018 with the intent to share firsthand knowledge from the expert teams that are accelerating transformative technology toward commercialization with funding assistance from ERA. In our Lessons Learned series, we provide a forum to talk about the challenges that are faced, the experiences of advancing technology, and most importantly, to showcase the innovations that are driving the industry forward and the potential impacts of those innovations. We encourage our panelists and presenters to share the most valuable insights they have, from impact to market opportunity, from ideation to budget management. Today, we are fortunate to be joined by three panelists representing ERA-funded in-situ oil sands projects from Imperial Oil, ConocoPhillips Canada, and Meg Energy. And we have a fourth panelist, a representative from the Canadian Heavy Oil Association, who will share a broader industry perspective on in-situ oil sands innovation. We'll start with presentations from each of these organizations this morning, followed by a panel discussion where we'll dive into some of the questions around the business case for these projects, as well as the market potential for future projects, and some learnings that we anticipate will, frankly, change the future of Alberta's energy industry. And of course, we're going to save as much time as possible for audience questions. So before we welcome our panelists, I just have a couple quick housekeeping items for our audience today. First, I should let you know that today's session is being recorded, and we'll post a copy of the recording on our website in the coming days. Our website again is eralberta.ca. Although we won't start discussing the audience questions until around 10:30, almost an hour and a half from now, you can ask a question at any time by entering it into the Q&A panel on this platform. You should see a toolbar on your screen, usually right at the bottom of the screen, with a tab that says Q&A. Click that tab and enter your question. If you'd like your question to be directed at a particular panelist, please indicate that in your question. Secondly, we have a lot of people online today. Last I heard, there were more than 400 people registered. Already, we've got 200 people online, and we expect that there will be lots of great questions. So if you see a question in the Q&A panel from someone else that you like, I can tell you it'll be way more effective to, quote unquote, upvote that question by hitting the thumbs up button than to repeat the question over again. We want to make sure that the most important questions are being answered. So we'll look at those that have received the most thumbs up or upvotes when we're curating the questions for our panelists. You'll also notice a chat function in the toolbar. Please don't use the chat function for questions for our panelists, but rather for things like technical issues. And we'll certainly try to help out if we can with technical or connection issues or things like that. All right, with housekeeping out of the way, let's meet our speakers and panelists. Our first presenter today is Cheryl Trudell, who is Vice President of Upstream Research for Imperial Oil. I first met Cheryl probably about 3 years ago, and I continue to be impressed with the tremendous innovations that Cheryl and her team are working on at Imperial. Today, Cheryl will be talking about Imperial's Cyclic solvent process. So Cheryl, whenever you're ready, please unmute yourself, share your screen, and feel free to take it away.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate the kind introduction. I'm just trying to share the screen now. There we go. Can everyone see the screen?
I can see it. Great.
Great, thanks. So as I said, thanks, Mark, for the introduction, and thanks to Emission Reduction Alberta for allowing Imperial to share our CSP, otherwise known as Cyclic solvent process, with all of you today. So just an intro to give you a little bit of information on what is CSP. I'm going to refer to the cyclic solvent process as CSP throughout the presentation. It's just a little easier. But really, in order to grow future production in oil sands, as an industry, we need to bring forward technology that has step change performance in GHG emissions. So what is CSP? Well, CSP is very similar in terms of a wellbore layout, in terms of performance, in terms of operational performance to CSS, our cyclic steam stimulation process. The difference with CSP, and you can see the picture on the top right, instead of injecting steam, we inject a light hydrocarbon. In this case, it's propane. And what we do is we use that same wellbore to inject the propane, as well as produce the bitumen, as well as the propane back through the same wellbore. The solvent is injected below fracture pressure and above solvent vapor pressure. The solvent mixes with bitumen via fingering, and due to that large mobility contrast between the solvent and the bitumen, that enables the fingering to happen. So in combination with fingering, dispersion, and gravity, we have this reduction in viscosity, because if folks know that bitumen is very, very thick, I always try to think of bitumen of a really thick peanut butter, or a really thick maple syrup. It doesn't flow naturally, and so you need to reduce the viscosity in order to produce it to the surface. CSP is a non-thermal process, hence two key challenges facing thermal processes like the cyclic steam stimulation process, as well as SAGD, steam-assisted gravity drainage. We have actually avoid, some of the challenges with those two thermal processes because we don't have to generate steam, which produces, greenhouse gas emissions. And the other benefit of this particular technology is the thermal inefficiencies, which limit applicability to thinner or lower bitumen saturation reservoirs. So this particular process actually targets some of the resources that are currently not viable at Cold Lake because of the lower quality reservoirs. About 90% reduction in direct GHG intensity as a result of this technology, and there's very minimal water requirement as well. So let me give you a little bit of background on the technology development. I'm probably going to date myself a little bit with this. We started exploring the cyclic solvent process back in 1997. And that's actually when I joined Imperial, and I remember our research scientists working in the lab on this particular technology. So it's been a while in terms of working a lot of the fundamentals, the physics, really understanding, the quality of the reservoir, what type of process, what type of light hydrocarbon would work, as well as recognizing that we had a large resource base in Cold Lake that we were trying to unlock with a new technology with an improved environmental performance. So this involved a lot of collaborative research. Imperial has a major shareholder with ExxonMobil, and so a lot of collaborative work with ExxonMobil and their research scientists. And we have the benefit of having our own research facility. And so a lot of laboratory work over the kind of the 1997 to 2010 was pursued. A lot of work around, the whole fingering aspect. For folks that have ever been to our lab, we actually are very proud of our physical model lab. And with that particular lab, we actually are able to simulate. We have this little reservoir box, and we are actually able to actually run, various scenarios within this kind of pressurized vessel. And we can actually get some results really quickly. Are they perfect? No, they're not perfect, but they definitely provide a really good direction for us in terms of what we think is going to happen, and we can able to test things out really quickly and quite cost effectively as well. So integrating all of our lab testing, our model experiments, working through phase behavior analysis, we got to a point in 2010 where we felt extremely comfortable to move forward with a pilot. At that time, shortly after our decision to pursue this pilot, Emission Reduction Alberta, but at that time it was called CCEMC, had a competition, a challenge. And we looked at that challenge and decided that, we meet the criteria for this, and we're going to file an application. I wasn't around at the time when this all happened, but, Imperial keeps pretty good records, and I did scout around in our directories and found the original CCM proposal. And I took a quick look through it, and really, not much has changed in terms of the robustness of the, emission reduction application process and competition process. And, we decided that, this made sense. We met the criteria, and we applied for an application. Fortunately, we were successful at getting that. And so in March, I believe, of 2012, we first started to receive our initial project contribution. In June of 2014, our pilot started up, and then we ran it for about, I guess, 4 years before we had an independent peer review. And then at that point, we deemed that the technology was commercial. I'll go through it in a couple more slides in terms of a little bit more information about the pilot, but just wanted to show you the broad, scale and timeline that we were working under in terms of, getting this technology, from an idea to a pilot and into a commercial decision. So let me tell you a little bit about the CSP pilot. The pilot costs were $100 million, and we constructed that pilot at Cold Lake. So folks know that, we've been operating at Cold Lake for some time now. So we integrated into that existing infrastructure. Imperial was successful at receiving 2 grants, one from Emission Reduction Alberta and one from the Innovation Energy Technologies Program. Both were received in 2012. In terms of a scope, we drilled 3 horizontal wells of 100-meter in wellbore length, and we also drilled 6 vertical observation wells, which were extremely important for us so that we could evaluate, take samples, and really understand the conformance of where that propane was going in relation to where it was being injected. We installed a number of surface facilities, storage, solvent storage and injection, production and measurement, and pipeline to one of our existing plants at Cold Lake. We had multiple cycles of solvent injection, so very similar to CSS. The first cycle, you're injecting either with CSS, it's steam. In this case, it was propane. And as subsequent cycles, you continue to increase the volume of the propane injected. And And then we also had surveillance and dedicated surface facilities. We had tools in our horizontal and observation wells to measure pressure and temperature. As well, we also, as I mentioned, took fluid measurement and samples. So the one key thing for, before we started up the CSP pilot was really trying to hone in on, what were going to be our performance metrics. Really important, when you're spending $100 million on a pilot, that, you're going to get really good data at the end so that you can make a definitive decision on the technology. So hence, a lot of work was, upfront in terms of what was going to be our surveillance plan, what we were going to install in the observation wells, how frequently we were going to take samples. We also shot 4D seismic kind of pilot startup, and then along the way as well to see how the conformance for the solvent within the reservoir, where it was moving. But we actually defined key performance metrics ahead of time. So bitumen and solvent recovery, as well as rates. When you start to inject light hydrocarbons into the reservoir, really important that you understand the recovery, because it does have, economic implications. If you can't get that, more costly light hydrocarbon coming back and recovered, it's going to make it really difficult to pursue the technology commercially. Oil to solvent ratio, how efficient is the process, was another important key performance metric that we also defined ahead of time. We also had to provide sufficient information to assess whether CSP is a commercially viable recovery process for our asset at Cold Lake. So getting these results was extremely important along the way, because we use those results in terms of looking at predictive. You're tracking along how the performance is doing on the pilot, but then you want to use that data and use it to say, okay, if I continue on with this process for the next, 5 to 10 years, what is the performance going to look like? What are the rates going to look like? What is the solvent recovery and the bitumen recovery going to be? And then another key thing, although I did comment, we do have very sophisticated laboratory equipment and able to test a lot of things at a very low cost. Gaining that operational experience is extremely important. And we found, we did have a few challenges, operational challenges, when you think about, putting in a new type of operation, a new type of recovery system into an existing operation. There's always a lot of learnings. So getting that operational experience through the field trial was extremely important, plus allowing our operators time and training them up on a new technology was also really important. What I can tell you is that, Imperial's technology development employee deployment activities have not changed. We've had a number of pilots at Cold Lake, our laser, our liquid addition of steam to enhance recovery, our SA-SAGD pilot, and our future pilots, our EBERT, our enhanced bitumen recovery technology, as well as our enhanced late life process, all follow a very similar model. So it's really important, as I mentioned, we're confident in some of the work we're doing, through the simulation, the lab, and then we get to the field. It's just the real rigor that when we're done with the pilot, we can, kind of put our hand on heart and say, yes, this technology worked, or it didn't. Oops, sorry, I don't know what happened there. My apologies. Can you guys see that?
Yep, it's not full screen, but we can see
Yeah,
your
I
screen
don't
here.
know what happened there. Okay. Well, I just have one slide, so hopefully everyone can see it. I just want to spend a little bit of time, just talking about our partnership with Emission Reduction Alberta. I mentioned, I went back in time and, looked through our files and looked at the application process, and nothing has changed, from, back in 2011 to today. Emission Reduction Alberta has really clear project qualifications and expectations, very thorough reviews, expression of interest, full project proposals, presentations, very clear decision process and timelines, and contractual agreements, which also provide a little bit of flexibility as well. as well as really clear reporting and milestone requirements. Before applying, to any, Emission Reduction Alberta, Alberta Innovates, or NRCan programs, we do spend a bit of time, making sure that, we can achieve the expectations of these programs before we submit. And we always want to make sure that we can adhere to the program requirements. The milestone process, from what I've been party to over the last few years, has been extremely simple. And Emission Reduction Alberta has always been extremely flexible to adjust if, pilot challenges occur. We did have some, minor facility limitations when we started up. We did have some surface flow assurance issues, with the pilot. When you start injecting, liquid propane, we were having some problems with flow assurance issues. And that caused some of our milestones to slip a little bit. But both Emission Reduction Alberta and the regulator were very flexible in allowing, some extensions of some of the milestones, which we were really appreciative of. And then the other thing that I just want to highlight is just the quality of, the Emission Reduction Alberta advisors. When we go through the various milestones and discussions, with our point of contact, really good engagement, very much a trusting working relationship. We both want these opportunities and these projects to be successful. So it's a very open, transparent discussions, and we get a lot of value out of that partnership in terms of, very strong technical people asking us questions, because we're really proud of our work as a company, and we can get a little blindsided that, we know exactly what we're doing, but just having those cold eyes reviewers coming in and asking questions definitely helped in terms of moving this opportunity forward and, helping with some of the challenges we experienced along the way. So in wrap up, we really value the partnership with government agencies, with Emission Reduction Alberta, Alberta Innovates, NRCan, just to name a few, to help us advance as an industry game-changing innovations to transform our Alberta oil sands developments. So with that, I guess I'll close and say thank you for giving me the opportunity to share a little bit about our cyclic solvent process here at Imperial.
Oh, thank you very much, Cheryl. Fantastic presentation. I look forward to hearing more in the panel discussion as well.